Hi everyone, my name is Terri and welcome to Friday Fact Day, where I get to tell you about some of the work I'm doing in fitness, feminism, and philosophy. And today's fact is Rocky is not fitness pedagogy. Of course, there's plenty of pop culture properties that have the name Rocky involved, so just to be clear, I'm talking about Yo Adrian, not Rocky. One of the things I've experienced many, many times throughout my career as a fitness instructor, both in classes and as a personal trainer on the gym floor, is that people just kind of do things by watching other people. And sometimes that includes fictional people in film and television. And I want to talk a little bit today about why that really causes some problems. First things first, of course, what is pedagogy? I've talked a little bit about it on this channel and probably need to add that to my list of videos to do in the near future. But pedagogy, basically speaking, is the theory and the practice of education. It is what teachers use when we decide how we're going to teach and what our teaching philosophy is and what our approaches are to different bits of content. So it's kind of the art, it's kind of the science, it's kind of the philosophy and all those things about education rolled into one. Ultimately, it's how we parse how we think people learn. So pedagogy through pop culture and through observing other people around you is just sort of an interesting subcategory within the broader topic. And as one of my favorite authors, Bell Hooks, has said, pop culture is where the pedagogy is. So the things that we watch, especially if we watch them repeatedly, often teach us things quite subconsciously that we don't even realize we're learning. And I've noticed that in particular, the Rocky films tend to have that effect when it comes to physical activity. Coming into the gym for the first time is a really intimidating situation, and a lot of people don't want to admit that they don't know everything going on. Now, an honest person, including an honest trainer, will tell you they don't know everything about fitness. I've been in this career for 15 years. I teach the courses to become a fitness instructor, and I don't know everything there is to know about fitness. But for a lot of people, that admission is really difficult, and particularly for a lot of men who were raised with very traditional masculinity, the idea of a man not knowing what all of this stuff in the gym does is really anxiety inducing. We have this sort of idea that men sort of naturally know how to do exercise things. And I'll put a link down below to my previous video from a few weeks ago on girl push-ups and where some of that comes from. I did a bit of the history in that one. So what ends up happening quite often, and it's not always men, but usually it's men, they look around and they just repeat other people's activities, not necessarily knowing why they're doing that or what it means or what the purpose is or what the outcome is supposed to be. And this is also why I caution people all the time to maybe not go to gyms that don't have a personal trainer on the floor. And if you're going to work with a trainer, make sure you have checked to see that they're actually credentialed, because there's no standardization of credentialing. There's no legislation of credentialing. As I've said many times on this channel before, you do need to check and make sure they've actually written some exams and somebody's vetted this person. Now, not everybody's going to need a personal trainer, but a trainer on the floor can stop somebody and say, what's going on there? And let's have a look at that and why you're doing that particular exercise. A trainer can also step in if you're about to do something really stupid, which is really how I make my living. One of the things I often ask people is, why are you doing that particular exercise? Or sometimes it's a standard exercise with some odd variation on it. And I'll ask them, even if I know why a certain variation is supposed to work in a certain way, I'll ask them if they understand it. Frighteningly often, the answer I get is, well, I saw it in a movie, or I saw it on TV. And increasingly, I saw it on YouTube. And I cannot tell you how many times I have heard somebody say, I saw it in a Rocky movie. Like, I actually don't think I'm overselling it to say that it's actually kind of creepy how frequently I've heard that answer. So where does this come from? I think a couple of things. There's a bit of agnotology here, like most things I discuss on this channel. We are often in what agnotologists call a native state when it comes to fitness. We get the impression we know about it. We go through phys ed in school. Maybe we played a sport or did a dance class growing up. And of course, we see it happening all around us. The problem with fitness, though, is that's not the best way to learn. Observation is a great way to learn a great many things, but weight training in particular and exercise in general is not one of them. There's just too much context required in order for people to truly understand how an exercise is supposed to be done in order for it to be safe and effective. Safety is the absolute all-time number one. I will always, always intervene when safety is on the line. Effectiveness, Depends on how much I've had to speak to a particular client. Have I had to have a lot of talks with them about this sort of stuff? Are they coming in with lots of references to pop culture and YouTube content that is sketchy as hell, and I'm constantly having to harp on them about this? I might back off if effectiveness is the only problem. As long as they're not about to hurt themselves and others, I may just let it go. One of the first things I was taught when I did my teacher training, I actually have a BED. That's what one of the big blue and gold wall hangings back there is for. One of the very first things we learned in teacher training was sometimes you just got to pick the hill you're willing to die on. And effectiveness when safety's not on the line, not always my hill. It's really tricky with pop culture and social media in particular, because the people that are doing this stuff look like they must really know what they're doing. Actors who are trained, especially for sports movies like boxing, really look good on screen. Just because they look good on screen, however, doesn't mean what is going on in the training montage is anyway accurate. That's not filmed or scripted for accuracy. That's filmed to look good on screen. That's all it's really ultimately for. Sometimes people get the impression that doing a particular variation is more effective, or even it's harder. And that's one of the things I hear a lot is, oh, well, this is a harder variation. Yeah, a harder variation on a given exercise, though, doesn't necessarily mean it's better. Looking like you can do something that's harder, that's tougher, that's more extreme, that's cooler, especially compared to, the guy at the other weight rack right over there. That's really tempting. And for young men in particular, we see this a lot because they really kind of feel they have to prove themselves in this environment. One of the problems too is, of course, once we're in a fitness space, most of us are hyper aware that we are being observed, we're being seen. And that's really unnerving. The origin of that, I think, really comes from our childhood experiences. Many of us did phys ed in school, maybe participated in a sports team or something similar. So all of our early physical activity experiences as kids involved being graded, being judged in some way, being coached, having things picked apart and assessed. Sometimes you were just told to do better and not really given any instruction on how that's supposed to happen. All of those things make us very hyper aware that we're being watched. Some of you may be familiar with the concept of the looking glass self. And that is a concept that was published in 1902 by an American sociologist called Charles Horton-Cooley in a project he did called Human Nature and Social Order. The idea behind the looking glass self is that when you are aware you're being watched, your behavior will change based on your concerns of what you think people watching you are observing. In a gym context, if you think people are observing you and they think that you're weak or that you don't know what you're doing, you'll sometimes overcompensate to make it look like you're not weak and that you do know what you're doing. It's very tempting to take the biggest, most muscular person in the room and just do what that guy's doing. And you don't necessarily know what that guy is doing internally. You can see, the movement of a joint, but you don't necessarily see what's going on internally and what muscles are squeezing. So what happens is we see a lot of people, again, particularly young men, mimicking other people's behaviors in the gym. And that can just, ooh, boy, have I seen some things. I have, oh yeah. A couple of hot tips. This is the stuff you all came here for, I'm sure. There's a few things that you should look for in somebody who's working in fitness, whether they're the trainer on the floor or somebody that you're paying for one-on-one time with. And then things you want to avoid if you see them crop up. When you're in a facility and if there's no staff on the floor and you're relying on other exercisers, make sure you ask questions about, oh, why are you doing that? Oh, why is your grip on the bar that way? Why do you have that stance or that posture? If they say, I don't know, don't follow them. If they say, oh, I trained in hockey in high school and my coach said to do it this way, that's not a legit answer. If it's somebody older and they say, I worked with a personal trainer 25 years ago and this is how they showed me how to do it, yeah, I might want to get something a little more up to date. Lat pull downs in particular, that is a classic for clients who are middle-aged and older saying, oh, I learned this 25 years ago from a trainer at a, so-and-so's gym. So just because somebody's doing something doesn't mean they're current with their information or they're accurate. Now, somebody who's an actual fitness educator should always be able to tell you a handful of very specific things. First of all, they should be able to explain to you what muscles are working, what joints are working, and how the movement mechanics of that works with whatever equipment you're using or whatever exercise you're trying to do. If you end up with a fitness instructor who refers to their tricep or their deltoid as that thingy, run. get out of that class. Do not work with that trainer. They should be using proper anatomical language. Little caveat on that one. I use proper anatomical language all the time, and I have people go, what the heck is that? I don't know what my deltoid is. So then I back off and give the colloquial term. But generally speaking, I start with the anatomical language first and then explain. I could talk about this for hours. This is one of my absolute all-time favorite topics in fitness and in philosophy and everything else. But it is a hot, sweaty night here in Halifax. I really want to turn my fan back on. So I'm going to leave you with that for now. And of course, don't forget to do all the YouTube stuff, the like, share, comment, all the stuff in the box down there. And of course, as always, I say it every time, lift heavy, fight the patriarchy, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye.